So I'm at basketball, right? And we have a pretty consistent group of people who have shown up for as long as I've been going to these in particular, a couple of years now. So whenever someone new shows up, it's always like, oh, is this going to be like a consistent player, or is it like more of a vacation thing? So this day we had a couple of a group of 4 Spanish guys show up. And I have a pretty good ear for Spanish versus Mexican Spanish now, if I really listen. So I didn't get confirmation, but I'm pretty sure they were from Spain. Anyway, so I think they were on vacation here, but they wanted to play, so it was great. They were good players. You know, they'd been playing with each other for a while, but they weren't like obnoxiously good. You know, like so. It was a very even game, a good workout, which is what the most important part of it is. And they were really nice. And that was really jarring because usually, whenever I mention these basketball games in these videos, it's always to complain about the testosterone-fueled nonsense that reminds me of the worst of competitive Pokemon. You know, it's the kind of... Even when we have, like, a girl or two who show up to play, then it's still so obnoxiously male that, you know, it makes a Michael Mann movie look like a women's picture in comparison. Oh, sick reference there, Kev. My references are out of control. Everyone knows that. Anyway, so yeah, these Spanish guys being so nice was like a welcome change of pace, but I was also suspicious of it, right? And I was like, what's wrong with these guys? Why are they so nice? And especially because at one point I went up for a layup. Even though there were 2 guys there, it was a good shot, okay? I was fighting for it because I knew I could take them. And I did. Even though they fouled me, I made the basket, which is kind of like a regular thing for me. It's no big deal, whatever. But what was really nice is that usually when something like that happens and there's contact and someone starts complaining, I personally never call a foul. My teammates get really mad at me for not calling fouls, even when I've blatantly been fouled, because I just feel wrong, you know? But anyway... So, you know, everyone's going, oh, and one. And this one guy, you know, from the Spanish players, he's on the other team. He was like, nice play, and he smacked me on the ass. And that didn't really bother me or anything. But I was just so surprised. I was like, that was so nice. I just really felt good about that play for so much more than I normally would. Anyway, it contrasted pretty violently when I was walking back from the movie theater last night, because the theater where I saw Solaris is close enough to my apartment to where I can walk if I want, and, you know, public transport doesn't go so often late at night. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not waiting for this. I'll just walk. I like walking anyway, and it's, you know, pleasant weather. And as I'm walking to the... As I'm walking, you know, not too far away from the theater, then this car pulls up next to me, and I'm like, oh boy, where's this going? And in check, this guy sticks his head out of the window, and he looks like the most, you know, Czech guy ever. You know, he's like 20 or something, I don't know. And in Czech, he goes, hey, you want to fuck? And before he's even given me the opportunity to say yes, then his friends and him have, you know, driven off, and they're yelling all this other bullshit. And I was like, man, I miss my Spanish friend. Anyway, so that was not really the point of this video at all. I don't know how it relates to RBY, but I was already going to make an RBY video in the near future because Zapdos is used as a lead now, which is pretty nuts. But what's even more nuts is what Exeggutor, Coconuts, bam, nailed it, is the, you know, thing alluded to in the title, the development, the thing, 1982, directed by John Carpenter. The development in the title, which is, of course, that Exeggutor is now seen as a top 3 Pokemon by many. This is not some sort of, like, universal, like, you know, fuck Chansey, Exeggutor is the new thing. Obviously, this kind of thing goes back and forth, especially when you were walking on such sacred ground as, you know, the big 3 in RBY. But it's funny because this was particularly jarring to me because a couple years ago, 2021, I made this video with the top RBYers, Troller, Amaranth, and Nails, the link of which is in the pinned comment. And it was going on about how Exeggutor has dropped, which was not new to me because back then I was still following RBY closely. I was pretty good at RBY back when, you know, not like a real RBY player, But, you know, I knew the metagame. You know, I liked building teams. I had a streak in, like, 2016 where I was using a lot of Persian and doing well with it. I was really locked into it. I, you know, even wanted to play it in SPL at one point. Anyway, so yeah, in this video, it's all about how Exeggutor sucks. And I remember this being familiar territory for me because I saw, you know, Nails in particular was making posts like, oh, Eggy sucks, you know, hyperbole. But it's like, it just feels like a one-for-one machine. You know, it just like, it trades evenly at best and could potentially just, you know, fall flat. You know, I hate this Pokemon. I'll find other ways to take on Rhydon. So let's find, you know, I would prefer to use other things like Cloyster and Starmie or whatever. And this whole Exeggutor falling thing coincided with people realizing just how good Starmie is. So Starmie became the new top 4 because it used to be in RBY. The top 4 was Tauros, Chansey, Snorlax, or Snorlax over Chansey. I'm actually not 100% sure on that one, so grain of salt. But either way, they're 2 and 3, and they felt mandatory. You know, you need those 3 on every team was the old rule in RBY. And then number 4 is Exeggutor, and honestly, like, actually back then, I'd take it back, it's not just top 3, it's top 4. You need Exeggutor, so it's really just 2 Pokemon. Obviously, you know, now we're in an era where people are dropping Snorlax, you know, not just Chansey. You can make up for lacking Chansey by using Alakazam and Starmie to take on specials. But Snorlax is, you know, now that's being dropped even more. Like, players like Xcal are talking about it a lot, and it's pretty good. And that's something else I wanted to address in these videos. But then I found out that Exeggutor is being ranked 3, and it's not about Starmie being bad. I mean, Exeggutor being ranked ahead of Starmie, as you see on in this post, is one thing, but Exeggutor being number 3 ahead of Chansey, now that sounds wild. And hell, even this Xcal post has him considering Starmie for number 2, torn between Egg and Lax for number 2 and 3. Now, Xcal is a far, far better RBY player than I am, or have ever been for that matter, and is far more up to date with the metagame. But I also know that Xcal has a severe contrarian streak. And, you know, we've gotten... So I'm going to take this Exeggutor number 2 thing with a grain of salt, personally. Other RBYers are free to, you know, give some more credence to this idea. But if it's just Xcal saying it, I am going to take this with a healthy dose of skepticism. All respect due, of course. You know, I'm not... but... You know, I'm just still remembering, oh, Camerupt is actually better in Heatran than DPP, and I have not gotten over it. So, but yes, this is where the sentiment starts, as far as I can tell. This is last October, after the RBY Cup, and all these posts are in the pinned comment as well. And now, more and more people, so I'm not sure if Xcal has quite pioneered this idea of Eggy number 3, or if it was part of a greater development that was going on. But, yeah, I mean, here he's saying Snorlax will be droppable with more exploration, but we're not there yet. Before we get into the specifics of this, I would just like to say the fact that RBY is still seeing developments like this after so long. You know, I see a lot of people say, oh, this metagame is solved. Everyone who has ever said this about any metagame, any tier in any generation after RBY should be fucking ashamed of themselves, because Jesus Christ. Yeah, the idea of Eggy number 2 is pretty nuts, but... You know, it's not like it's doing new things, to my understanding. It's just that people are more appreciative of its traits in relation to what is now being used more. Like, for example, before it was, oh, Rhydon and Golem are just for stopping the electrics, and Rhydon is better because it hits harder. And then, you know, another development was, you know, Rhydon actually is crazy, crazy good. In its own right. It is a vicious physical attacker, and if you don't have an Exeggutor, nothing switches into it safely. You know, you have to really be careful around it. So one of Eggy's main traits, obviously Sleep, and Boom, and Stab Psychic, and, you know, all the other stuff it can do. Stun Spore, you know, spreading paralysis, Hyper Beam to knock off specials like Chansey and Alakazam from low health, Mega Drain to mess with Starmie a little after a Psychic special drop if it's paralyzed, gain some health back. You know, then, sure, it can do a lot of that stuff, but... yeah, it was... You see what I'm getting at, I hope. Anyway, so this post stood out to me about you cannot make a decent team in this tier without Exeggutor unless they sacrifice builder integrity in some shape or form. And again, I will not speak personally to this, but this is a fascinating, big if true. So, if you have, the idea to me, I'm familiar with. I think Zapdos is mandatory in GSC, and whether or not you agree with that or not, you probably have your own version of my GSC Zapdos. You will make your team worse if you don't use this. I'm not talking about the undisputed ones like RBY Tauros or GSC Snorlax. No, some people will say, all T-Tar should be on all teams in advance. Well, that was more popular a few years ago, but you get the idea. Or, it's very difficult to make a good team without Jirachi and DPP. That one's very popular. Misguided, mostly. People who aren't as familiar with the tier say that, but you get the idea. So, it's mostly Rhydon matchup. See, this is what I'm talking about. Rhydon is so scary, and by having an Exeggutor, you instantly become so much better against such a big threat. That's big, and obviously, you are doing this with something that dishes out sleep so reliably. Harder to land sleep, and you need to rely on solo sleepers who very often do not end up landing their sleep, such as Jinx or Sing Chansey. So this is getting into the real nitty gritty about sleep support. Which sleeper you use, or which sleepers you use, how you use them. Do you lead off with Gengar and then blow up the opposing Jinx and then go to your own Jinx, for a 5v4 early on, potentially 5v3 if you get that quick Blizzard freeze or Ice Beam freeze, which people are using now more now, sorry. So sleep is of such importance, broken status, of course. A horse is a horse is a horse. Cannibal the musical. My heart is full as a baked potato. Yes, yes, here, okay. So now here are the other viability rankings. So this one, pretty traditional, Lax, Chansey, Snorlax, Chansey, Exeggutor, in different ranks. This one's, more representative of recent times. Tauros, Snorlax, Chansey, Starmie, then Eggy, then Zam. This one too. But here we have the first of Tauros, Snorlax, and Eggy. Now, I'm not going to, dive into, the separate tiers here, especially because there's no explanation given. So we're just going to say, Exeggutor an entire rank ahead of Chansey. Let's not get hung up on the specifics of that. But this one looks pretty traditional. But here, look at this post even from Vileman, where he says, "Look, Eggy is stupid good." So even though he doesn't actually have Eggy as third, he is still reflecting the general sentiment of the RBY player base that, forget this video from 2021, or not, don't forget it, but, the sentiment of this video where it's like, oh yeah, Eggy's kind of a drag, yeah, it's good, but, we're wanting to use Starmie, is now less in favor of, oh no, Exeggutor's really good. Now, even though I have personally not experienced serious RBY play in some time, I'm familiar with the phenomenon, It happens all the time in my metagames of choice. Especially DPP is the one I'll focus on now, is the one, it's the phenomenon where people forget, insert obviously good Pokemon here. Now, RBY is, of course, much more centralized, so, they're really getting into the details. So sometimes in something like DPP, which has a greater pool of viable Pokemon, then sometimes people will just forget it. But, I always think it's funny when someone, starts using a set that was insanely popular before and it says something like, you know what? SD Lucario is actually really, just a random example off the top of my head, but that's not, or random Pokemon off the top of my head. Nobody's talking positively about SD Lucario right now, actually, but almost nobody. But yeah, I already see it happening. People will do this about something like Gengar for a while. Say, oh, you can't use Gengar. Focus Blast. And then nobody uses Gengar for a while, and then for some reason someone decides to start using it. Guys, did you know that Gengar can switch into fighting and ground and explosion and rapids? Oh my God, it's so strong. It's so move pool. And it's like, yeah. And then they kind of rediscover what is already good. So this feels like Eggy has been. So, it was so known before that I was like, yeah, I know what Exeggutor does. Leave me alone, and we'll forget about this, and, we want to be more optimized. And then people are realizing, Exeggutor is actually kind of good. You know, actually really good. Actually, oh my god, Exeggutor does all this stuff. Yes. Here's McMegan with. Okay, well, this is a hot take of a different breed. This has Chansey ahead of Tauros. Will he elaborate like David Lynch? No. Here's Pisone, who's an RBY player I remember. Great player. Chansey-less. That's cool. He's not sold on the laxless teams. Personally, this comforts me. Because I have no ground to stand on and say, oh, well, you know, people dropping Snorlax, you know, these kids these days. That's just my personal feeling. And I talked to Amaranth, one of the RBY players who I did the video with before. And he was like, yeah, no, don't worry. It's still like a very, very minute subsection of teams that can drop Snorlax without really regretting it. And obviously, you know, sometimes you do just obviously want that Lax doing what Lax does. But but it can be done. But yeah, it's still, you know, very, very specific. It's just relative to, you know, RBY tradition where you gotta have the Lax, you gotta have the Chansey and the Tauros. You know, now there's greater flexibility. So Pisone is talking about Laxless teams being slow, and he talks about enough instant violence buttons, and I like that phrasing. You know, that is a very good way of putting Lax. So he's got, but you know, putting that aside, look at his own viability rankings. He's got he's got a Tauros opinion, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, look, he's got Snorlax and Tauros and Snorlax in the first tier, and then in the second tier he's got Exeggutor first. So on the subject of Exeggutor, he says literally does everything you could want. Perfect tool to unlock early game reflect Snorlax mirrors. Yeah, so here Pisone says, and this is reflective of what Amaranth said to me, and I'll read out his response after we get through these posts. But what Pisone is saying here is basically what Amaranth was saying, which is, when I drop Chansey, I'm thinking about all the opportunities it opens up, but when I drop Exeggutor, I'm just dreading all the compromises I'll need to make. And what Amaranth said to me, you know, that was what Pisone said, and what Amaranth said to me was, you know, it's about Exeggutor being very good, but it's not fully about that, and also more about Chansey's own flaws, which are becoming more apparent. And I mean, again, this is relative. It's still, you know, fucking Chansey, right? But it's still, but with the amount of specificity and precision you make with these RBY teams, then you can drop Chansey more than you would before. Obviously, in absolute terms, Chansey's still going to be crazy popular, crazy good, but it's no longer, you know, you start your teams Tauros, Snorlax, Chansey. So yeah. So going eggless Pisone now says going eggless feels like a toll because you're basically forced to play dumbass sing Chansey. And I like that he does the French thing where he says that you have to play this Pokemon as opposed to use it like we would in America. Yeah, and he also says it's an absolute must in Chansey list. I'm never leaving home without it. So, this is basically saying Eggy is so good that it doesn't matter if your opponent knows it's coming because it's not going to stop it, which is, of course, a hallmark of the most elite Pokemon. Now, to get... he said there's no Pokemon in RBI intrinsically better than a 4-attack Lax, which that was always my favorite Lax. So I'm glad that people are using that again. People are like, oh, there's no reason to use anything other than Reflect for a while, and I was like, surely not. Heavens no. But yeah, the Tauros opinion I wanted to say Pisone has is that he says there's a parallel universe where this Pokemon is banned because nothing that happens before Tauros hits the field really matters. Now, I personally understand this feeling. I've seen enough broken generations with, you know, insert stupid endgame sweeper here, where it's like, why are we... I remember talking to Blunder about this, like, during Magirna's most broken times, pre-Ultra Sun and Moon, just like Sun and Moon proper, where... You know, it was like, why are we even playing most of the game if it just winds up being, you know, Magirna at the end, you know? Yeah, and then Pisone goes on to say, do you really think this thing actually isn't busted? I think everyone's just used to it and too lazy to change the tier. That's fine, but know that I'd vote ban if I had the chance. Just imagine a world where you don't have to wait for the Tauros to unfold who's going to come out on top. What a concept, so... Tauros ban at RBY? Oh, that would be really something, but we're on Exeggutor here. Here's Amaranth's own list. He does not quite have Exeggutor there, but it is fourth. It is ahead of Starmie. And like the thing where it's less about, Eggy being amazing and more about, Chansey's own flaws, I think it being... this is not quite the same thing as Chansey. I apologize. It's more, if you're ranking Eggy ahead of Chansey, it is partially Egg being amazing and also Chansey's own flaws, but I don't think Starmie has really fallen. It's still pretty universally in the top 5 from what I've seen. I don't think I've seen a single viability ranking without Starmie in the top 5. So, yeah, it's still Starmie is Starmie. And as Amaranth said to me, it's like Chansey is the main reason... Starmie's the main reason you use Chansey, and Starmie is the main reason you use Chansey, and Starmie isn't going anywhere, therefore Chansey isn't going anywhere. But yeah. Anyway. Another... Okay, here's Eggy at number 5 from Marco ASD. Here's Eggy at number... Whoa, Shiloh's ranked it way low. All the way down at number 6. Genesis, number 4. And here from D's Cast Forms, another top 3 Eggy placement. Tauros rank, then right below it, Snorlax, Eggy, Chansey. So there it is again. And the explanation is, game in, game out, so reliable, status boom, damage, pressure, defense, Eggy does it all. Such a Glumon, works with almost anything. And then he goes on to say, seems I'm not the only one this year who thinks Chansey's been surpassed by Eggy. I'm not sure I've played a full set this year where I've bought Chansey every game. I don't think I've ever gone so far as a triple drop it, but I've dropped it twice plenty of times. Because remember, RBY has played in best of 3. In everything, even SPL. Beautiful stuff. Still very good, but the days of normal 3 dominance are over. Yeah. And here, okay, from Blazing Dark, aka Mr. Sauce, what a name. We have another Exeggutor at number 3 rank. There's Tauros rank, Snorlax rank, and then Eggy, Starmie, Chansey number 5. Here, yeah. Also, going back to Pisoni's post, he also had Chansey 5th. So, Starmie's not dropping at all. If anything, it's Chansey's own flaws being more quote unquote exposed. That might be a little harsh considering it is still such an elite Pokemon, but it's less about these Pokemon and more about Chansey's own flaws. Or even in this other post that, oh no, Zapdos was top 5. Oh, okay, here's the first viability ranking where Starmie is out of the top 5. As here, it is coming in at number 5, 6, 7. Jeez. Yeah, so, that is D's Cast Forbes' other scorcher of a take. Well, Zapdos number 5 is up there, so. See, the personal touch in this ancient metagame makes the game seem so different. Here's ABR. He's also on the Egg at number 3 train. Ahead of Chansey and then Starmie. So, better than Chansey. Explosion and Sleep are too good. Really useful at positioning early games in a way that other mons are, I assume this meant to say, are not. Even Jinx and Gengar as sleepers often appreciate having Egg in the back for added flexibility. Yeah, and he says, it goes on to say that Chansey-less teams are trending upwards pretty consistently for the past couple years, so this rank feels fair at number 4. Yeah, and that's the end of the post. So, now while we go over this, we have this other replay from the, because the reason the viability rankings are being updated right now is that the RBY World Cup just finished. And I love that RBY's player base is so, passionate and diverse and, large, that you can have an RBY World Cup. That enough countries can field a team. Anyway, so we're going to go over this one while I go over what Amaranth said to me. So, yeah, he said the most compelling arguments, part of those arguments to him, that even though he had Eggy at number 4, that's still number 4 as opposed to, remember a couple of years ago, it's like, oh yeah, Starmie has surpassed Eggy, and now, no, it's back to, at least for most people, I think the consensus seems to be that Eggy is ahead of Starmie again. So, he says, to me, the most compelling part of those arguments is that Eggy is basically never dead weight. This is Swiss Army knife that can always do something useful with its early or mid or late game. Whereas Chansey is very good on average, but there are some situations where it's game losing. Say you play a regular battle, and you get yourself in a tight 3v3 endgame, but they have a Snorlax alive and you have Chansey alive. And if you're in a spot like this, then you're going to have Chansey's passivity and low physical defense really exposed and up a hill. You know, even if you have these spots that should be even, right? Because you have the same number of Pokemon, then you know Chansey actually puts you at sort of a deficit. So, yeah. So my understanding of this is basically that the physical normals, Tauros and Snorlax, you know, with everything revolving around them so much, that if you're gonna have your Pokemon withstand or go into the late game, then you're gonna want something that can actually take them on, because otherwise you are heading toward a late game situation where you are, you know the Snorlax and Tauros are coming, but you know one of your Pokemon is not really doing much to stop them, you know. So that's how I see it anyway. And you know, Eggy obviously, if you have, is much better at taking these on. So that's how I understood it. So then Amaranth, that part just now was me, not Amaranth. But Amaranth goes on to say, you know, in a 3v3 tight endgame, people can just double switch Tauros into Chansey and claim a full Pokemon in exchange for a T-Wave quite often, which obviously it's not ideal to have your bull paralyzed, but in a 3v2 situation, it's really hard to lose a lot of the time. So, as opposed to the worst of situations for Exeggutor, where it somehow hasn't found a single spot to be useful in the early game, but, you know, because of Explosion and that great bulk, then, you know, you have situations where later in the game you're staring down a Zapdos, you just take a Drill Peck, hopefully you don't get crit, and you explode. And you don't quite take Tauros out, but you don't take Tauros out. You don't take Zapdos out, but Tauros finishes it off. So, it's funny because I remember, this is me again, I remember when, you know, before it was like, oh, Exeggutor is so weak, it can't even KO Starmie with Explosion from full health. But I understand, it's not about the damage itself so much as the flexibility. So, oh, I know why the thing was... Yeah, okay, if I open Discord to look at... Oh, no, wait, do I have it now? Is it okay? Yeah, if I open Discord to look at the... Okay, I know how to fix this. I'll look at Discord from my phone. If I open Discord to look at the log of the chat, then the computer starts exploding. Yeah, okay, so Explosion is just basically a phenomenal bailout tool from any disadvantageous spots. Also, as an aside for the endgame argument, Chansey also forces you into passivity in many spots, you know, because great players will read the forced, quote-unquote, Chansey switch-ins and double with their Laxes or even Rhydons if the Chansey doesn't have Ice Beam, it just has Seismic Toss, as it would on Reflect T-Wave sets. You just open more and more spots for that kind of aggression to choke you out, and, you know, you don't want to set your opponent up to have that sort of opportunity. So, Amaranth goes on to say, if I find simple, concise ways to put it, I'd say, number one, losing to Snorlax is very undesirable at all stages of the game. And number two, Exeggutor's floor is very high because he can always find ways to make himself useful, whereas Chansey's floor is lower because her bad matchups can be harder to overcome. So, yeah, which then I said, you know, this is amusing because Lax is more droppable than ever to my understanding. But, you know, then Amaranth says, yeah, it's more droppable than ever, but it still doesn't mean very droppable. But yeah, Exeggutor has had a hell of a time in the last couple of years, he goes on to say, because it went from a basically 100% usage, you know, like earlier we alluded to that whole Big Four thing. Every serious RBY team starts with the Big Four, like about a decade ago, even less, really. And it goes from virtually 100% to sub 50 and below Starmie, now back up at a clear number 4. So, you know, he says that, you know, it's not, the RBY Viability's rankings have not been averaged out yet, but it seems like this is the general consensus of the player base. And some people make the case it could be 3, but more so because Chansey's being challenged. Yeah. Yeah, okay, there's... Okay, then we were just talking about win rate and stuff like that. That's basically everything. Historic stuff. You know, the fact that Eggy is even being considered for this is pretty nuts. Considering that, you know, even when it was, you know, top 4 undroppable, it was clearly, you know, there's the 3 normals and then Exeggutor, you know. So, but yeah, it's obviously there's so much detail to RBY that, you know, this kind of stuff can pretty much go on forever, which is wonderful. You know, solved metagame. Sure. I'm sure if I built an RBY team right now with what I remembered from however long ago, like, I on one hand, you can't really go too wrong, you know, because it is RBY, but if I were to play, like, an elite RBY player in a tournament, you know, it would be, there would be some stuff I wouldn't be aware of. Now, I'd like to think I have enough general, you know, Pokemon sense to where I can read the game situation and, you know, play my way into whatever. But the point is that overall I would be lacking in some sort of knowledge, and that would be to my great disadvantage, which in the long run, which is, you know, consistency, and that's what, you know, skill and all that other stuff, then that would lead the other RBYers to or to have an advantage over me and succeed more than me. So if I wanted to, you know, really get good at RBY again, then I would really have to learn. Like, on one hand, I don't want to say, you know, I have to catch up with the trends, because I don't think it's really quite. A trend to me implies something more shallow, you know, like, oh, people are really into this or that right now, but it's not because it's good. Because so to me, it's more, you know, what underlying ideas are driving the metagame right now, and, you know, it's great because it is kind of almost the ultimate refutation of the it's not that deep kind of thing. It's like, oh, RBY, you know, you spam status and psychics and normals and then you look at all the details into it, and it's wonderfully intricate. And it's like, dude, this metagame's almost 30 years old, and it's solved. What are you doing? Why are you actually thinking about it? And then you realize there's so much to think about. Like, again, I guess not again, because I've mentioned it in this video, but I mentioned it in a recent video that for all its silliness, which, by the way, I am not convinced that RBY is that much more silly than other generations. I think it evens out roughly. I made a video about this called "You Are Wrong About RBYOU." But yeah, even just running a standard team and play, or, you know, a standard team, you know, everything's standard, haha. But, you know, just running a team that is known and just playing it differently can lead to all sorts of different strategies. You know, like if you talk to a serious RBY player about, you know, what a lot of the developments are, it's like, oh, people are playing things differently now. So, yeah, that is basically it. So we're just gonna ride out this this replay. And yeah, so let me know in the comments what you think. Alright, we've got a Chansey war here. Actually, you know what? While this Chansey war is going on, I'm going to go check on my food and make sure I didn't burn it. It would appear Cooking Master BKC strikes again. So I'll have to match my cooking mastery with my thumbnail mastery. I don't know what I'm going to do with the thumbnail at the time of recording. Something really cool and unhinged, I hope. So while we go through this Chansey war, I will recommend some films so that you can enjoy Yeah. RBY's boring because look at these Chansey stalling each other. Yeah, as if that doesn't happen in every metagame, okay? Like, unless you're playing DPPLC, then you are at risk of running into a stalemate stall war of some sort. So relax. A lot of the RBY specific... I'm not saying RBY doesn't have issues. God, of course it does. All tiers do. But... a lot of the RBY specific, anti-RBY sentiment, RBY sucks in a specifically RBY way, that kind of invective winds up being more reflective of your own ignorance, It's kind of like a DPP, someone says, oh, Jirachi is mandatory. It's like, Anyway, actually my watching habits have not been, I've been slowing way down recently because of how much work I'm doing with getting ready for my movie, and work in general to help support that movie. So from the last time I did this, then I've only seen a couple things. I'm really into Hitchcock right now, so I finally watched The Birds. Much more violent than I was expecting, but I liked it very much. I love whenever Hitchcock settles into a scene and there's no dialogue. It's perfect, pure cinema. I watched Alex Ross. The other thing I've watched since then, other than Solaris, which I mentioned, which was amazing. Oh my god, I liked it so much I left a little blurb on Letterboxd about it, which I linked in the pinned comment of the last video. I did not realize, because I saw it 2 years ago. Sorry. I saw it twice. Almost 4 years ago. I saw it at the beginning of 2021, and then I saw it again later in 2021. And I liked it just fine, but it was good. But this time, in the theater, and with a lot more cinematic experience under my belt, then I really wound up appreciating it. At first, I was like, yeah, it's good, but then it really goes into its own. It is basically a David Lynch movie. It's really extraordinary. And it's, it gets compared to 2001 because, it's like the Russian version of the space race and, that. But to me, it's much more in the line of Vertigo. As well as, continuing in a sort of lineage of Mikhail Kalatozov, another USSR, I think it was Georgian actually. But, he made his movies in Russian. USSR filmmaker who really paved the way for Tarkovsky, and whose Letter Never Sent I got to see in a theater this year. I loved it already, but in the theater, Jesus Christ. And I think now when the famous ending of Solaris, I think there was it was very similar, and I think it was not so much an homage or a copy, but, a sort of update on it because the contexts are so different, and the execution is so different, of course, fittingly, given the difference in story. But so I really enjoyed Solaris. I've actually also seen Steven Soderbergh's version of Solaris with George Clooney, and it looks and sounds very good. It's nice and compact at like 90 minutes. So it's much better than you would expect Hollywood Solaris to be. But I've just felt like it just kind of played into Soderbergh's limitations in general, where he seems to be, satisfied with just fine and not really go beyond. I haven't seen that. I've only seen like 5 Soderbergh movies, but I like Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That's a good one. Probably my favorite. The Limey was interesting, but the execution was not like, a gangster thriller directed by Alan Renee. It wasn't as interesting as you'd think, and I mean, Point Blank already exists, and I guess it was a cool homage to Point Blank, but I thought it was just kind of, what are the other ones I've seen? Oh yeah, before I forget, then the other movie I've seen in the time since making the last video where I talked about, movies I've seen recently, whatever one that was Alex Ross Perry's Queen of Earth, which was his. I like it. I heard of it as like a Persona riff, but it went into some more interesting territory and much more creative. Not derivative at all. I thought it was really interesting, so I liked it quite a bit. Anyway, regarding Soderbergh, as this game is now over because Ride On shatters Starmie, and it was very unlikely that Starmie was going to get out of that. With enough health to withstand the follow-up of Tauros. But yeah, so I'll just go over the Soderbergh thing and then wrap things up. So yeah, I like Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That's a great movie. And then I felt The Limey was okay. God, what the hell else did I see? Because obviously he's got 2 movies that came out this year. Presence, that like POV ghost thing, which I've heard is like fine, and then Black Bag, which fine also. And I remember one critic whose opinion I respect a lot. He said, like, yeah, it's good, obviously. It's Soderbergh. You're always going to get, like, a good movie. But he also seems, like, very pleased with himself. And I'm kind of tired of these genre exercises. And that's basically how I've looked at Soderbergh for a while now, where he just seems to constantly settle. Now, I know some people really go crazy for it because, yeah, it's like a spy movie. It's like Ocean's 11. It's fun and, but I don't know. I feel like someone of Soderbergh's talent and capacity should raise his ambitions higher. I know it's kind of unfair to say, like he should be tasked with, pushing cinema further, because not every director's. I don't know how to pronounce the French phrase out loud, but raison d'être. I'm so sorry for any French speakers out there. Reason of being. I know not every filmmaker's reason of being is saving the medium, pushing it forward or whatever. But God, you're gonna get these movies so widely released. You gotta do something more. And like, there's a kind of smugness to it. It's like, it's a knowing genre exercise, So I guess I don't remember Ocean's 11. Like, it was fine. I didn't really like it that much. But I'm sure I would enjoy it if I watched it again now. But I thought it was very eh. So that's 3 I've seen. I think I saw a semi-recent one. God, this is gonna bug me. Hang on. Oh, my ex watched Erin Brockovich right before she moved out. She liked it very much. I should watch that one. Because there are some that I want to see, but what are the ones I have seen? Because for some reason I feel like I've seen 5. Oh, I guess I've only seen 4. So what's the one I'm missing? Solaris, Limey... Oh, I guess that is 4. Solaris, Limey, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and Ocean's 11. Oh, I don't really remember Ocean's 11, so it's more like 3.5. But yeah, there's several I want to see of his. Erin Brockovich. Like, I do want to see Black Bag and Presence just because I want to keep up with contemporary stuff, but Logan Lucky seems kind of interesting. Contagion is a big one, obviously. And the other big one, besides Contagion, Out of Sight seems quite good. No, Che, that's the really big one I want to see. Che is really interesting. Haywire seems pretty cool. Maybe I'll go on a little Soderbergh binge soon. I mean, I've been meaning to forever. I could go on a binge of a lot of things that I've been meaning to see for a while. But I think he's got, like, Schizopolis seems interesting. But I think, like, those are the ones I'm most interested in. What's this one about? Oh, Side Effect seems... maybe, I don't know. But, not every movie is supposed to, blow your mind and but I feel like Soderbergh, being who he is, I mean, I won't repeat that point. Kimmy seems okay, that COVID movie he did, but like, I'm not really interested in Soderbergh, dicking around with iPhones and this is the technology of the future. No, iPhone shot movies. If you're gonna shoot an iPhone movie, you better do some really insane things with it, and not just shoot a regular movie that just happens to be shot on an iPhone. Anyway. Yeah. So that was not about what I was talking about at all, or subject of this video at all, but also I don't care. So thank you so much for watching / listening. I hope the update on Exeggutor and Chansey was to your liking, and I hope the general rambling was to your liking. Because that's the house style for those unfamiliar. I always like when I see a comment like, oh, did this guy ever get to the point? It's like, oh, they're new. Anyway, I gotta, go improve my cooking because I'm gonna be cooking for someone else soon. So, I gotta start expanding. If anyone wants to leave me some cooking tips, that would That would rock. I'm very good at making my limited stuff, but you know, it's limited, so I would prefer to expand. I am kind of a picky eater, but I'm trying to be less of a picky eater, you know? And I'm good with like seasoning and stuff like that, but I would like, if there's any like tactics that people use, whatever, you get my point. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.